Good evening. I'm Michelle Frame, Candy Scientist. I'm the president and founder of Victus, a food product development lab based in Chicago, where our specialty is confectionery and all things sweet. Today, though, we're going to talk about chocolate, the food of the gods. Chocolate comes to us from Mesoamerica, where the cocoa beans were prized by the Mayans as valuable currency. Chocolate comes from the plant called Theobroma cacao tree. It only grows 20 degrees north and south of the equator, so a very narrow band around the world. On the tree grows pods. This is a dried one, but they come in all sorts of colors of yellows and oranges, reds, greens. They grow on the tree along the stem and branches. When you open up the pod, there's a very juicy white flesh. The pulp is sweet and tart, reminds me of something like star fruit or a little bit of kiwi. I love going to areas of the world where I get to taste and eat this pulp because it's absolutely fantastic, and I highly recommend a trip if you have the opportunity to do so. Within the white pulp, however, is the incredibly bitter, dark cocoa bean. Now, cocoa beans look like this. They're dried out, sometimes on mats, sometimes on banana leaves, for a number of days, where they're raked and moved around until they're dried out completely, and then bagged in burlap bags and sent to the US, Europe, or wherever the chocolate is going to be processed. How does chocolate actually get all its flavor, though? Well, part of that drying process absolutely develops a flavor. So does where in the world it's actually grown. Like wine, chocolate is very dependent on the soil and the weather. Additionally, along with drying, is when the product is roasted. Now, the beans can be roasted just as this, or they can be broken open. And if you take it and break it, you get what's the nib inside. And the nib breaks out into what looks like very dark chocolate. Some pieces there. That can also be roasted for different flavor profiles. In addition, the cocoa or chocolate liquor, as we call it once we roast the beans and grind them up, is mixed with a very defined set of ingredients. That's because in the US we have a standard of identity, which means only specific ingredients can be added and only at certain levels in order to be considered chocolate. Once those ingredients are added, flavor comes from conching, which is the stirring and mixing of that along with those ingredients, such as vanilla, the type of vanilla, and the milk, and how much milk and what type of milk is being used as well. We'll come back to that in a moment. First, let's talk about the types of chocolate we have in the US. First is what we know as the dark chocolate. It has the most cocoa notes and all those flavor characteristics that come out just like wine does. From fruity notes to dark, roasty brown notes to caramelized spices, we get all sorts of notes that can come through the cacao bean. Next is milk chocolate. Now, some folks will say that this isn't premium chocolate, but I beg to differ. Find different milk chocolates and taste them for the truly interesting experience they are. Whether or not the milk is whole milk or skim milk, whether it is drum dried or spray dried, or mixed with sugar before it was dried, will all create very different eating experiences, where that milk can be very fresh and creamy tasting, or it can be caramelized and a whole variety of flavor notes that milk in and of itself can add to the chocolate base and create fantastic experiences. Which leads us to white chocolate. Now, some folks say this isn't real chocolate because it doesn't have the cocoa. Again, I beg to differ. The reality is it's cocoa butter that makes chocolate chocolate. We can have cocoa sitting to the side, but cocoa butter is what makes us really want to eat chocolate as it is. And here's why. The cocoa bean, or within the nib, is 50% cocoa powder and about 50% cocoa butter. When we temper cocoa butter, we get it so that it is solid at room temperature but melts at body temperature. And that is the fantastic reason why we love chocolate so much. It releases the flavors as it melts in our mouth. Finally, we have the newest chocolate, Ruby. It's fruity and pink and a good fun flavor. So let's talk just for a moment about how we would pair those with some wines. Here's a couple ideas to try while you're bound up at home. I would say with Ruby or a nice white chocolate, try that with a Prosecco. A Chardonnay, get a white chocolate that has really nice caramely notes to it. Dark chocolate, obviously a Cab will go nicely, but I really love a Malbec. And to finish off dinner, well, get a fabulous milk chocolate and try it with a lovely ice wine. You can't go wrong. Let me know what you've done and how much you like it. Thanks so much. Again, Michelle Frame, Victus Airs.